Hello, welcome back to the Transfer Flow podcast. And on today's episode, Barcelona beat Atletico Madrid as Real defeat Villarreal. But what red flags can we find in these signature victories? Then Newcastle end a half-century wait for silverware with victory over Liverpool in the League Cup final. But where was the game won and lost? And Inter beat Atalanta in a top-of-the-table clash in Italy. But how costly could Bastoni's red card prove? That's all on today's episode of the Transfer Flow. So we're back for another Monday edition of the Transfer Flow podcast. I'm joined by Ted Knutson. How are you doing, Ted?
I'm very good, and I have one very important note today. It's very, very heartwarming. I need to wish happy 16th birthday to my son, Kieran, who listens to every podcast, and in fact, I think has actually spread the gospel of the podcast and the newsletter to some of his friends, so they could be a little less dumb about the football around there. So, yeah, happy birthday, kid. Took him to his first Arsenal game when he was 5 years old, kept it entirely a secret that day. And 5-year-olds are like just the best. So we go up to like Holloway Road and we're walking around just along there. Like he can't see the stadium from where we were at. And he's like, there's a lot of Arsenal fans up here. I was like, oh yeah, there are a lot of Arsenal fans in London. No big deal because people like wearing their kits on game day. Burger, milkshake, and then take him to the stadium for, I think it was like a 4:30 kickoff against Newcastle. And that was his first trip to the stadium. And then there was a later one that we went a couple years later, maybe 5 years later, where he heard some of the most horrible words he's ever heard. And I had to look at him and I said, if you ever repeat these in front of your mom, we're never going to another football game. And he's a good kid. So like, as far as I know, it's never actually happened that way.
Man, I've got to say though, like, is it an act of love to get your child into supporting Arsenal in 2014? Doing the maths quickly here.
That was a tough one. It was a tough one for a long time. I'm not even sure it's gotten that much easier. There's still like just that extra little bit of heartbreak of almost and hope.
Sure, man. I don't know. That was a bleak era, but I mean, what a sign of love though that he listens to his dad talk about football in his free time. That's crazy.
And occasionally he's like, Dad, I listened to the B-roll. You know that I actually listened to that, right? And I was like, ooh, kind of forgot about that. You know, just bleep that out of your mind. Just boop.
If I said to my dad, can you send me recordings of all your sermons from like the last 10 years? He would think I was insane. He'd have me committed.
But well, I like the fact that podcasts and video podcasts exist because it means that if I ever die, if my kids ever wanted to, and this is not intentionally bleak, like this is just leaving a record for your kids. Like they can go back and they've got hundreds of hours of audio and me having opinions and occasionally telling very, very silly stories. So yeah, I think that's actually a decent little thing to leave them. Hopefully they've got another 50 years of me not dying, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Depends what breakthroughs that weird guy that you love makes.
Brian Johnson. We're going to talk about Brian Johnson on Man Down at some point.
DJ. Yeah. Okay. No Brian Johnson today. It's not what this show is about. But we've got a bit of a roundup of Europe's top 5 leagues today, less the Premier League, so maybe Europe's 2 to 5 leagues. And we're going to talk about the League Cup final as well, because it was a weekend of pretty big matches across Europe. So we're going to start off in Spain. Atleti played Barcelona on Sunday night after Real Madrid had beaten Villarreal 2-1 in incredibly unconvincing fashion.
Poor Ravi.
Yeah, poor Ravi. But the Atletico Barcelona game was genuinely super fun. Atleti, arguably the only team to have had a worse week than Liverpool. I was pretty impressed by Atleti exploiting the wings against Barcelona. I thought it was a good performance from them that they were unlucky to lose.
I feel like we need to set the stage on this because the game that they played together before was a 4-4, right? So
sure.
It's not like we were expecting this to be a dull, drab affair. We just came off with something that was like very cool and weird. Like honestly, I think these two teams match up in very weird ways. But yes, and Julian Alvarez continues to look fucking scintillating in every single thing that he does. Yeah, so I think that this was actually, it felt like Simeone got a handle on Barcelona for a long time.
Yes.
And then, well, I mean, let's talk about the wings and the exploitation first, and then we'll talk about the ass kicking.
I mean, look, it's one of the things you can do against the high line, right? You know, you can have those third man runners. You can have, you know, your striker sort of pinner defender, I guess, and then a third man runner, or you can advance up the wings, make the back line shift over, and then leave space in the middle. And both goals happened in this way. They were able to get free down the wings. Atleti ran really hard this game. Like it was actually a very energetic attacking performance. Perhaps recognizing that playing their normal defense against this Barcelona team is not the greatest strategy.
They're just too good technically.
Yeah, and they really came out at them. And getting down the wings, then pull the ball into the box. If you've shifted the back line over, then there are one or two guys there. There's kind of a 2-on-2. Alvarez gets the first one with a finish that I think is seriously underrated. It's such a good finish because it looks like an open goal, but it's kind of behind him. He can't really swing his foot at. It's bouncing onto the bone of his ankle. I think it's a very missable shot.
This is the thing that so many people comment about, like why expected goals isn't like the perfect encapsulation of what actually happens, right? Because like you don't actually see, where the ball's at, and it took us collecting shot impact height, which is where the ball is when it struck, for us to realize like it's not just like headers are hard, but anything off the ground is hard. Anything on the ground is like far, far easier. And so if it's off the ground and it's off a weird body part, like, you're just like, yeah, good luck. And occasionally you get a women's player that does an insane scorpion kick from what is technically a 7% chance, but we've only seen it once in all of football go into the net. Or you get something like this from Alvarez. And yeah, like degree of difficulty is always the thing. So when I was talking about the commentators in like previous, I think, B-rolls and complaining about them, it's like, look, you guys have so much experience that you could lend to why this was a tougher shot than the expected goals say. But instead, you're just like, oh, he'll feel bad about that one. He'll be a little disappointed. He should have gotten that on target. He needs to do better there. Like, no, talk to us about like, where on the training ground you might have ever practiced that and how difficult it is and like what actually happens. And like, maybe you never actually get that practice. You only get it during weird pickup matches on gravel surfaces where the ball bounces funny and you still got to be able to put it away so that you can run to the other end and high five your mates. I don't know.
Yeah, this was always Wenger's argument, right? Where he was like, if I buy a striker from some parts of Latin America, then I know that guy has been able to score goals on a cabbage patch. And if he could do that there, then he could do it at the Emirates.
There's an entire school of learning about this. And Germans love to create new schools anyway, but differential learning is huge around this. It's like Steph Curry getting a better handle because, half of the basketball that he did was out on his gravel pavement that had a peach basket at the end of it around some farm. So yeah, it's certainly true though. Like having training situations that constantly bring up unexpected things means that you have to solve problems with whatever skill set you've got, and then after you've seen it a few times, you might be better at solving that problem. And Wenger was exactly correct in that South American and Latin American football is just not as well funded. It's not as pristine in the surfaces you have to play on. Like you play in lots of weird situations, and that actually helps create more diversified footballers.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, look, to go back to the game, Atletico Madrid were doing kind of well, and then Barcelona got angry. And,
so there were only 8 shots, only 8 shots from Barcelona as Atletico Madrid went ahead 2-0. That's fantastic, right? You've got to be like, yeah, we're 70 minutes in. Barcelona have 8 shots. We're doing great. We got 2 goals. This is awesome. And then
Lewandowski. It's that type of finish. That's another example, right? Where these are the ones where, your Alan Shearers or whatever will say, oh, well, it's a shot anywhere in the opponent's half. He should score. But Lewandowski, I think, is the only person I've ever seen reliably score these kinds of chances, where he just takes a touch on the edge of the box, pivots and puts it in the far corner on his wrong foot. It's an absolutely astonishing goal. And then they break the offside trap to get Ferran Torres a free header for the equalizer. And then
so when we were talking before recording, Rishi was like, there was a foul in the build-up to the Sorloth goal, and I think that it just pissed all of Barcelona off, and then you saw them take it out on them for the last 20 minutes. That's good fun. Who doesn't love that? Yeah, so you get a Lewandowski goal. That's a lovely finish. You get the Ferran Torres one off of a cross, and then you get Lamine finishing what is actually a 1 or 2% off of a successful dribble way out yonder.
Massive deflection.
Yes. Well, that's probably why it actually went. Yeah. That's the thing. Like,
but it's almost it almost gets a deflection like before it's even left his foot. Yeah. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and And people like are often harsh on goalkeepers, but if you've ever played goalkeeper at all, you know that like your body lean then is reading everything that's happened right in front of you. And so you've picked that up and you've done millions of shots probably as a professional keeper where like you're picking up what's happening with the ball. They try and teach you how to readjust as quickly as possible. They teach you how to hold your balance at the moment of potential choice as long as possible so that you then are able to react to anything that happens weird. But there's just a certain point where you're like, I got this and you know sometimes you're just wrong-footed. You got no chance whatsoever, even if you're some sort of 6'8" octopus that usually saves things.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't really know what Atleti could have done at the end of this. Really, like they kind of have like once that one goes in, they just have to push forward, and then
Don't
a
talk
fourth
shit
one
to Michael
happens.
Jordan. So many stories about Jordan being like, you know, 4 for
Sure.
12, 4 for 15 through the end of the third quarter, and somebody said the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, Mike scored 24 in the last quarter. We lost by 20 points.
But this is the thing. I mean, like, Atleti live to do this, though. You know, like Atleti is the most Uruguayan team that is not managed by a Uruguayan or is in Uruguay, and so they have to give it to them. And I don't know. I just felt really bad for them because I think they've played 2 games this week against their 2 biggest
They
rivals.
did
I
not
think
deserve
they've
this.
been the better team in both, I would say, or at least broadly the better team. This one, obviously, you know, more finely balanced. And yeah, they didn't deserve this at all, especially because I thought they played against their instincts. Like in this Barcelona game, they did try and open the taps. In the Real Madrid team, they didn't just shell; they did offer something, and it's frustrating because
It feels bad
I'm fond of
because
them.
yes, and Simeone is going to go back to the other way because you know
Yeah.
it's like no, it was working and then it didn't work, and he's like, I'm going to go back to my way because it doesn't work that way either. But at least I feel better about it.
Yeah, I know that is the concern. But Real Madrid though, their game because they beat Villarreal, and it's a pity we don't have Ravi here to talk to him about how sad that is because Villarreal have been one of the most entertaining sides in Europe this season. They're fantastic. Their numbers are fourth best in Spain. They're in fifth right now. But this match is Villarreal were clearly the better side. Real Madrid scored 2 goals, pure Mbappe magic. But I wanted to ask you about this because after the Champions League games last week, the response has been everyone talking themselves into Real Madrid. It's Real Madrid's to lose. It's always Real Madrid's to lose. But Real Madrid don't look very good at the moment. And the goal they conceded in this game is kind of an embarrassing set piece goal where nobody's doing anything competent.
I think the commentary as the game occurred was this was the most Real Madrid way out of all of the past Real Madrid ways for them to make it through another round in the Champions League. And it's hard to disagree with that because, you know, it felt weird and unfair, as so often they do. For years, the team that actually felt like they were the most dangerous and irritating was Juventus. And I hate Juventus because I feel like they've been the cheatiest team on the planet for almost all of my time paying attention to football. Um, but now, like, you know, since Real Madrid just can't stop ever losing or stop winning in the Champions League, then you're like, look, you have to stake them, you have to burn them, you have to cut the head off, you have to like scatter the ashes to the four winds, like make sure that
Yeah.
it's all in sea and buried. So that I think is why they continue to have the reputation for what they do. They have super elite players, like almost all over the pitch. Even when they're slightly injured, it seems like they manage to find some magic out of the depths of their academy or even squad that you're
Yeah.
like, oh, like that guy is just he's just killing his contract, right? He's just earning out his contract because they can't get rid of him, and yet he's almost one of their best midfielders for the season. It's just like,
Mm.
why are you even still here? And yet you're still pretty good. So I guess that's why you're still here. And the league now, when we look at the table, 60 and 60, but Barcelona are on this hellacious run again in the positive. They've got the better goal difference by 16 goals, so like that's
Yeah.
not in striking range, and they've got a goal or a game in hand. Atletico Madrid are 56, but you know 2 losses in a row, so it is a wonderful La Liga race this year. Like even Athletic Club are at 52, so like you know they could potentially catch you know Atletico Madrid if things went wrong. But I don't know. Like I think seeing Real Madrid when they're fragile, seeing them when they continue to slightly overperform, seeing them when the talent just does enough to bail them out over and over again, but they're human, right? That
Yeah.
is the most interesting version of Real Madrid. And it's the same way with, I did the write up in the newsletter for Manchester City. City used to be that they were the most boring team in the Premier League, because the moment that they took control, like nobody could ever catch them, like they would just kill the game over and over again. Now City games are the most exciting games in the Premier League over and over again, because they can't keep anybody off of them from like 1 to 12. Like, everybody is super competitive there, and Real Madrid feel a little bit the same in that, like, they're mortal for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, I mean the thing is they've defied gravity in so many ways for so long. Like they're not a pressing team. They're not like a deep defending team. Like they're not amazing at anything like this. And so as a result, like when you look at them, you think we can get at these guys in a million different ways. It'll be absolutely fascinating. I think the Arsenal matchup against them. Like you say, I think Arsenal are going to be like, we're going to score. We're going to try and score 8 corners with Gabriel. That is our plan. Arteta will have watched the Juan Foyth goal in this game and thought, okay, I've got an idea. But even then, pure Mbappe magic. The second goal is just a fraction of space at the top of the box, whips it into the side netting, and it's done. And look, Villarreal are a tough team. Like, it's an away game at Villarreal, so maybe we shouldn't draw huge conclusions. But 2 pretty poor performances by Real Madrid in a week, and they remain tied on points at the top of the table, and they've gone through the Champions League. 2 pretty good performances from Atleti. They're out of the Champions League, and they're down to third. Though the good thing is, at least, the team that is furthest behind in that 3-way title race is at least the one out of the Champions League. So Atleti can now focus their resources, such as they are. Well, I guess they're pretty good this year. They're better than they've been on the league, and we'll see if something can happen.
Yeah, if you're a fan of football in Spain and La Liga, like, this is a great season. No one can complain about that. England's complaining because Liverpool have run away with things, and now that Liverpool are finally mortal, it seems like you can't actually catch them, even though they've had a lot of bumps as Atleti Madrid have. But this league is exciting. Where England are super exciting from 2 to it's definitely 9, and it could even be 10, 2 to 10 positions.
Sure.
Spain is like, all right, 1 to 4 are kind of exciting. So this is the balance
Sure.
on the 2.
Yeah, it's nice to see Athletic do well. It's nice to see Villarreal do well. But it is just a top 3 situation there right now, in my opinion.
And Barcelona continue to be one of the most fun teams to watch in the world, despite the fact they're terribly run. They've got this just wonderful team to watch, full of like some young future superstars that will be, as long as they stay healthy, they'll be cornerstones of Barcelona and Spain for as long as they continue to play.
There was a rumor, though. There's a rumor in the last 2 days that Manchester United want to spend £70 million on Raphinha in the summer. And I was looking at that, and I was kind of like, I was just like, but he's been so good that it's really hard to justify selling him. But do I expect him to be this good again? Do I expect him to be £70 million good again? Like, no.
Do you expect him to be that good?
Hard to answer.
Do you expect him to be that good in Manchester also? No. Do you expect him to want to go to Manchester? Also, no.
Yeah, true. Yeah, though at the same time in Barcelona, it's like, well, we will pay you in your grandchildren can have free seats to Barcelona games. Like, that's how they're starting to pay guys now.
We'll even put your name on some of the new seats. Just like your name can be there. That's a priceless privilege that we will also charge supporters, £2,000 for.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. Okay, right. League Cup final then. I think we should talk about the League Cup final. Newcastle ended.
Hang on a second.
Oh, go on. Come on.
Don't you have a call to action to do?
Oh, yeah, I do.
What kind of professional are you?
If you're enjoying this show, and God knows why you would, given the standard at which it's being recorded, please do leave some comments below. Let us know your thoughts on the games that we're talking about. Let us know any questions that you would like us to answer in future episodes. Give us your opinions of all kinds. We really, really welcome them.
Let us know how irritated you are that we are not doing the Champions League race in the Premier League for this episode. We've decided to hold our powder dry until next week. I got overruled. The producer said, hey, you got to do this. So that's what I got.
You've got to forgive us. We need something juicy for the international break because, look, everyone hates the international break. It's shit and it sucks. So we need something there that's interesting.
Now, do you know what we're doing in order to make up for that? Patrick and I are launching a new podcast called Man Down Podcast. And so as you're noticing those things pop up on your social, and certainly when they start to launch, maybe even tomorrow, if the podcast host gets their shit together, that is the gift that we've given you. So while you're being really fucking bored by the international break, you're going to get four episodes of us doing exactly what you asked us to, which is have really warm, open, vulnerable conversations that hopefully improve your life and improve those of your friends. Because you can just do things, apparently. And yeah, you can just go forward into the world being the change that you want to see. So that's what we're going to do. Four episodes. Yeah.
Let us know how it goes in the comments, unless it goes badly, in which case we don't care. Moving on to the League Cup final then. Newcastle ended a 56-year wait for a major trophy, 2-1 victory over Liverpool. My first note here, cooked them. Absolutely cooked them. I thought Liverpool had their first shot in injury time at the end of the first half, by which time Newcastle had 9 shots. It ended up 17-7 on shots. But the thing I really wanted to ask you about is that first goal, right? Because loads of talk after the game and talk during the game. People said, what is Alexis Mac Allister doing marking Dan Burn? And it was a great story. I'm glad that he was, because Dan Burn gets an incredible goal for the club he's supported for years. But Arne Slot said afterwards, well, look, if they have their tallest guy 15 yards from goal, I don't really give a shit if he gets that header. He said 99 out of 100 times that will never lead to a goal. And obviously, because it did lead to a goal, everybody is very, very cross about this. But Ted, I'd like to hear you talk about it as a set piece. I don't want to say fetishist, but like a guy who's, into set pieces.
Okay, thanks. Some might say expert. I don't know. I've taught like half of the Premier League people how to do set pieces, including.
Sure.
Yeah. So that is an example of the marking doing a good job, and unfortunately, the result was very bad. And in fact, I mean, obviously he's huge, but if you gave him the chance to have that header over and over and over again from that position, even if it were open, like how many times does he score in that? Not a lot. Like it's a tough one. So yeah, when somebody scores a 15-yard header against you on your corner defending, like you're like, ooh, that's kind of weird. Not sure that we could have possibly done anything wrong about that if they. And I remember James York and I used to look into the data set, and about once a year across the vast majority of leagues, you would see like a 15 to 20 yard header go in about once a year. That's more than 1 in 100. Like that's a lot of really terrible headers that never make their way toward goal. And it just happened to be at a high profile moment. I was going to talk shit about how, the League Cup is kind of terrible and nobody really cares about it. But the reality is it's been a long ass time since Newcastle won anything. And so, I guess they should take credit for that. Enjoy that. Like it's pretty good, actually.
It's mostly good. You don't want to forget about the fact that this has been facilitated by a helping hand from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, who always have a bunch of hands lying around, I guess. But it was it was a really good performance. I thought that they played exactly the way they want to play the whole way through. Liverpool couldn't get to grips with them at all. And the one thing I wanted to talk about was goal 2. You're right. It's fine. We'll move on. Because goal 2, I think we've talked in previous episodes about Liverpool leaving Salah high up. And I did want to give a shout out to Billy Carpenter here, who's talked quite a lot about this, has written really interestingly about it, and pointed out that often if you watch Salah as an opponent is approaching the Liverpool box, before Liverpool have won the ball back, Salah is on his horse, like running, getting ready to receive the ball in anticipation of them getting it.
This is also something that we teach. So like I love pre-organized patterns for your breakouts from 1 or 2 players, and you often split them wide, but you have one make a movement towards the other one, so that if you need to do a quick layoff and then a run, like a spin-off run, like you have that opportunity. Like I have had to kick so many coaches' asses who just stare at me like blinking. Like the more players you put in defense, and particularly if you ever put anybody on the fucking posts, the fewer you have in order to get this breakout and to be able to potentially have one of the best chances you will have every single game, which is you're going to get, your fast players on the run against an unset defense, which is what you're trying to create constantly. constantly in any sort of open play situation. But when you're defending corners, it's actually one of the best chances you ever get. And one of the better teams that ever did it, actually, there are two that we always sort of looked at. Leicester were awesome at that with Vardy and Mahrez in their title winning season. And the other team that I actually think was the single best team I've ever seen on the break was Mourinho's later editions of Madrid, when they had Ozil, they had Higuain, and they had Cristiano Ronaldo, and they had guys that could pass it to them. They were just stupidly good, and they would run in numbers. And the thing that I think Cristiano Ronaldo got little credit for, but was so noticeable if you watch this game, was he would always make the long high distance or high speed sprint. Like, he would always get into the box to be able to be there. He loved that fucking run so much, and he got, obviously 10s, 20s, hundreds of goals off of being that guy.
Yeah, one of my favorite goals of all time is a counter-attacking goal they scored against Ajax. Where I think it goes. I think Özil plays it wide to Benzema, and he plays it into the middle, and it's just the simplest tap in for Ronaldo because everybody's sprinting that way. Ronaldo just slows down. It's perfect. But they were amazing at that, and it just feels like this season Slot has, he's understood that he's got the best attacker in space in the world, maybe, and so they get Salah in space as much as possible by leaving him high up. And when you do this, teams have got a choice, right? They can leave somebody deeper to try and fend off this problem, or they can send their left back forward, ride it out, hope for the best, and understand that because Salah's not coming back, you can actually create overloads on the left flank and see what those come to. And the second goal in this game, Livramento was joining the attack a lot all game, had more than half of his touches in the opposition half. And on this second goal, the cross ends up being Livramento hoisting it into the box. And it's not like he's in an amazing crossing position. But because there's an overload on this flank, and Salah isn't coming back, Liverpool's midfield has to shift over. So Gravenberch comes over to help out Kwanzaa. Szoboszlai has to shift over as well. Konate shifts over as well. And that means that when the ball goes into the box, even though it's not a great ball or a great crossing opportunity, it is a great situation because there's a 3-on-3 in the box, and Bruno Guimaraes is completely unmarked at the top of the box. And by the way, one of the Liverpool guys in the box is Mac Allister, who's playing right centre-back because Konate has got out of position. So suddenly you have this huge goal-scoring opportunity. And I'm not saying it's all because of this Salah choice, but Liverpool have been making this Salah choice all season, and they largely haven't got bitten by the trade-off, right?
I think that they found the hole, and teams often have not been able to take advantage of the hole. The best thing that Newcastle have had outside of like a very good ball striking Ishak and healthy Ishak this year is when their midfield is healthy, they are contenders for everybody. And it's because Bruno in particular can do all the things. Joelinton is a physical mismatch for everybody in the world, man. I saw that dude throw fucking Reece James when I was in person at the Chelsea game, and he looked like he was wrestling some guy that was like 25 to 40 pounds underweight. I was like, I didn't realize how big he was, and he played at the base this game. And so the fact that Newcastle were able to have real midfield control and be able to pick up on the tactical choices that Liverpool made that left them a little bit fragile meant that they were able to walk out the door with a win in a situation where they probably wouldn't have been expected to. I do wonder if Liverpool kind of made the PSG choice that they made earlier, where like, oh, we're gonna not do much in the first half and see what we could do in the second half. I wonder how many guys are kind of in the red zone and carrying knocks that meant that they needed to make that choice. Because most of the time, I don't think Newcastle have been super competitive in this way, and they've had their own ups and downs throughout the course of the season. But they certainly got it right this time, and full credit to the coaching staff there, but also the players to be able to pull it off, because it's credit all around.
Yeah, you're right. I think it came at the right time for Newcastle to play against Liverpool. But how do Newcastle go about evolving this? I mean, obviously, as we get towards the summer, we're going to do some how to build episodes, I guess. But with Newcastle, they seem like they're an especially good matchup for elite sides because they're just going to gum you up and bully you. I don't know whether they are necessarily, ideally set up to just roll over the shitty teams week after week after week. So how can you try and combine these things? Is it possible to add that attacking thrust without losing some of the muscularity of their football so far?
I think a lot of it just has to do with depth, right? Like their starting 11 is competitive for almost anybody, which is why they're actually in the positions that they are. Like they're in the positions to potentially be Champions League team. There are a bunch of teams that are that way. When those guys are not healthy, though, like they've often suffered. They've stuttered through different phases, and there's some squad building there. Like obviously, if they had Minta, like that would be like pretty useful for them.
That'd be
Elliot
great.
Anderson also has been really good, and yeah, I'm not knocking that. Like they made their choices and they're dealing with it, but there has been recruitment that has been good for them. They've also got some turnover and some churn that's coming that I think might be slightly challenging for them too. So from a squad building perspective, like I think they've done fine. The danger is the rebuild that has to come within a year or two. Lewis Hall's fucking great though. And so if he's healthy, like that's another sign that they're picking up good talent that not everybody sees. The Minta choice was another good talent that not everybody has seen. So I think that there's some really good green shoots there for them to be able to do that. And the world's big enough that there are a bunch of English teams that can do this consistently, especially when some of the other teams are overpaying and making mistakes that are costing them money and digging their hole deeper and deeper.
Yeah, I mean that you always do have the door opened by certain teams making mistakes. I wonder if they'll try and if they'd actually be kind of happy if they got some really really big Bruno offer and they can retool a little bit with that
I
cash.
think that's true. I think that they always have to be a bit like Liverpool were, 7-8 years ago, where if somebody comes in for a big price on one of your players that you really like, but it's time for them to go, like you accept the Coutinho money and you reinvest that in like 2 or 3 players that are really good, and then suddenly like that's your core of Champions League side that goes on to win the tournament.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens this summer. I'm interested to see how it goes with Newcastle because obviously the rumors around Isak. There are always rumors around Bruno. We'll see if they can make the Champions League as well. Shall we go on to Italy then? Because Inter played Atalanta in Bergamo this weekend. Atalanta had a really good chance here. They were coming off a big win against Juventus. Inter coming off a tiring midweek, well, probably not that tiring a midweek, but coming off midweek football. But Inter won 2-0. And Ederson got a red card with 10 minutes to go. Nothing had happened. He just got in an argument with the ref, got himself yellow carded, then sarcastically clapped the ref, got himself sent off.
Don't do dumb shit like that. And like you have to know better than that in Italy, especially. Come on.
You should be allowed to sarcastically clap the ref. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and chef's kiss, why not?
Yeah, you should be allowed to do all that shit.
But I feel like you got to be like really careful about the different motions that you do because, not everybody knows how they translate so well.
Sure.
So Inter won this 4-0 on the other side of it, right? So they walked out basically 6-0 winners across a home and away here. Çalhanoğlu had the first assist, but not until the second half. Like shots were busy. This is quite a busy Italian game, like 16-14. Yeah. So it wasn't one of the pure gum up jobs that I think Inter have done in the past. Like this is quite a challenge. And one of the things that Gasperini's sides have proven that they can do is at least create shots, even if they're not getting great chances. But it was 16 shots for Atalanta and only 0.69 expected goals. So like volume over quality. And usually the Italian teams are happy to sort of stay in their block and let you take shots from range, especially if they're 3%ers.
Yeah, and then I mean, the stat line at the end, you do have to look at the timing chart, don't you? Because it's one of those things where it looks like a battering. Inter end up with kind of nearly 2.5 XG, I think, in this game.
But it's late.
Half of it is after that red card. Gasperini also got sent off. I should mention that. But it means that Inter are 3 up on Napoli because Napoli could only draw with Venezia earlier in the day. They're now 6 up on Atalanta. They've got the best goal difference. 9 games left. However, they are obviously still in the Champions League, and Bastoni got sent off as well. How big a problem could that be for Inter, do you think?
I know that they have been worried about their depth. The other thing you worry about as a team that's still in the Champions League and worried about depth is players coming back off of international injured. And that's like so brutal. You're like, look, hopefully they go away on international break a little bit refreshed. And sometimes you get 1 or 2 guys that come back late, or they pick up some soft tissue injury after a long trip. If you've got a lot of guys from South America that had to go somewhere weird in order to play. So it's certainly a concern, because if you're already worried about your depth, somebody that's important to you ends up missing 1 or 2 matches after this, and you might pick up an injury at this time of the international break, which they haven't been on international break for quite a while as well. So like they're not into the rhythm and the flow there. Yeah, I would be concerned.
Yeah, I don't know. I still think I'd put my money on them, just because I think, Napoli. We have the same worries about them in attack, right? We've had them since Kvicha went, and Atalanta are now far enough behind that it's getting pretty tight with this number of games left. Inter do still have the best goal difference as well. I guess that's worth another point. But
yeah, so goal difference is there. Their expected goals is about a quarter goal higher than anybody else in the league. So like, they're clearly the class of this, but knowing that there are some risks as well. And but 3 points is 3 points. It's 3.5, right? Like, any tie, they're definitely going to be ahead on goal difference unless Atalanta come back from 6. So yeah,
sure, okay. Well, I think that's the end of those major games we wanted to talk about. Is there anything else that you want to get into before we go? Because I saw in the newsletter that you had a little prod at Chelsea Football Club, who have been prodding us all season in our defence.
So first of all, to the people that complain that we cover Arsenal every game, we haven't covered Arsenal this pod. I just want to let you know we haven't covered Arsenal. We were shitty towards Chelsea fans when they were shitty towards us earlier this year, so we're going to be shitty towards the idiots and commenting that we always mention Arsenal. I was just basically saying that things have kind of collapsed when we're often ahead of the curve in commenting things that we find interesting or that we're a little worried about a particular team. I'm fans of football, and technically we have our own favorite fans, but we cover everybody, and we run a newsletter that not only covers everybody, we covers potential people that they might bring in, and understanding them well enough to know why they may or may not be useful. So there's a level of expertise there that always has me paying attention, and the money from the gambling also always has me paying attention, because like I'm literally putting my money where my mouth is to try and figure out, like, does this make sense or not? And do I have concerns about this particular team in different ways? And we were tough on Chelsea in the summertime for their recruitment. And even some members of our own Slack community were like, hey, looks like Chelsea are doing great. Do you guys have a new frame on or a new take on the Chelsea recruitment? Because it seems like, Boley and co have actually done much better than you guys said in the summertime. And we were like, no, not really. Like, I think that they overspent in all sorts of different ways in weird positions. They didn't really help this season's squad, which was already quite good, as we also gave them credit for, to get better. And then, the head coach that they hired, not saying that he's bad. We've never been saying he's bad. We just say that there are a lot of concerns. And those concerns are now something that's coming out of smart Chelsea fans' mouths all the time. Like, how the hell do we still not know how to build up correctly? Even when our good center backs are back, like, we're still like really, really weird. That's a huge problem. And why don't we have more depth in attack despite spending enormous amounts of money? Well,
it always comes down to the same thing. It's kind of, well, if we have Palmer and Jackson, then we're fine. And there doesn't seem to be a recognition that you're not always going to have Jackson and Palmer, and the team.
And Cuckoo should be better, but the fact that there's also João Felix and Pedro Neto, who aren't quite blanks, but they might as well be for the fees that were paid. Like, that's the other side of that coin.
Well, João Felix is out on loan because they were getting so little out of him. But don't worry, they're going to sign a bunch of Brazilian teenagers next summer or something. Like, look, maybe they luck into solutions here, but some of this is inevitable. Like, again, yeah, I agree with what you're saying. It's one of those things where when we're down on a team, everyone thinks that we're saying they're shit and terrible. And then later on, when other people are down on that team and we say, well, it's not quite so bad, then everyone thinks that we're pretending everything is fine. I just think, this is the first season with a new manager. Like, to some degree, you're going to end up doing, especially you're going to do a bunch of this boring midfield control possession stuff, because that's the kind of guy he is. And Arteta did that as well, as a kind of similar guy.
There you go.
So the next evolution has to be working on the pressing game, which, again, like we said, not going to talk about Arsenal, but Arsenal didn't press for like the first 2 years under Arteta,
right?
Because he was too scared to do it with the defenders that he had. So you need to go and figure out the attack, figure out how you're going to press with this group of talent, and maybe work on the defense, and that'll be the next evolution. So Maresca just has to get there.
Get the set pieces better. Arsenal and
Yeah.
Liverpool have given people the blueprint. Like, it's so obvious that if you sneak goals off of set pieces, because teams are like, oh, we just got rid of the ball. We got rid of the ball. Or you do something awesome like Brentford did this weekend, which is create a long throw, go ahead goal. Who's
My
been
God.
talking about those motherfuckers for like 12 years? Yeah, you can end up sacking out a lot of points that kind of come from unexpected places because teams can't just relieve the pressure valve there. Chelsea's expected goals off of set pieces have improved over the course of the season. So that might be a sign that they're finally sort of switching on and getting better. Yeah, we think their squad's good. But as we've noted so many times from other teams, if you continue to make overpriced mistakes, it will eventually come back and bite you in the ass.
Yeah.
While we're talking about kind of like the world showcase, though, and teams spending a lot of money, I did want to note that Como are one,
Yes.
positive expected goals down there, and two, they apparently are loading up for Bear in the summertime, partly as a promise. Like, they've got Cesc on a long-term contract. They want to keep him around. He's been an important part of their project since they originally bought the team, and they kind of recruited him to lead it. They've given him a lot of carte blanche. I think that this year, now that they're safely in the middle of Serie A and actually look like they play pretty good football, you might see that team be one of the surprisingly big spenders in the summertime.
Yeah, they're kind of like that early version of Monaco now,
Mm.
where it's like people want to come and live here,
Do you have
and
to pay tax there, though?
but you live by Como, so who cares? But yeah, they've also taken some interesting young swings, right? Like they've got a lot of change out of Diao so far, and he's already attracting interest supposedly from some Premier League clubs for the summer. So
I think the
maybe
problem was that they basically had Cesc Fabregas and friends. Like they basically had the Lionel Messi and what's happened to Inter Miami. Like, hey, anybody want to come play? Like, you can have a baseline salary and we'll hang out and I'll make sure you get some sponsorship money and shit like that. It feels like Como like brought in a lot of older players. They were like, oh yeah, we want vibes players, and then they actually needed to have some talent and some guys that run. I think this summer you could potentially see them go much bigger for like real talent now that they've sort of solidified their position and are happy to spend, unlike most teams in the world right now, which seem like they're a little careful.
Yeah, there are lots of interesting players like around in kind of generally the mid table of Italian. Like Como are better than they look based on position in the table, but players like Nico Paz and stuff have been really exciting.
Well, and you have the traditional teams like Juventus and AC Milan who have to be much more careful about money than they have been before. Bologna are in Champions League positions right now, even though they lost their head coach and they sold some guys that were apparently important. And clearly, I guess we're not. Juventus are not currently in Champions League positions unless like Italy end up with 5 spots, which we'll see about that. So Italy's weirdly, and I think this has kind of been a quiet story more so than a loud one, but they've been fun and interesting as a soap opera, like almost a telenovela type type football league for way longer than you'd expect. It's
Yeah,
fun. I really like it. Roma just refused to lose, by the way.
yeah, but and then Bologna smash Lazio, Fiorentina smash Juve. Like, is Motta getting fired? By the way, I don't know. I wouldn't feel good about keeping that job if I were him.
I think that was a really weird hire for them. I think well, I mean, look, they wanted to be back in the Champions League. They're competing with his ex team for the Champions League spot. Eh.
Great. Well, everyone should be happy then. I'm sure they will be at Juventus, famously rational club. Okay, that brings us to an end for this week's episode. Please do leave your comments below. We really appreciate them. If you're watching this on YouTube, leave us a like, subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on your favorite podcast app, then, I don't know, tell somebody about it. Leave us a 5-star review and make sure that you're signed up for the newsletter as well. We will continue bringing you content during the international break. And as Ted says, keep your eyes peeled for the Man Down podcast coming out soon, hopefully tomorrow, maybe. But we've been recording episodes. We've been going back to back. We've been like chugging Lucozade and getting through them. So we really hope that you enjoy them when they appear.
Cheers. Bye. We have the opportunity to buy mandown.com.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's expensive, but I might do it anyway because I think Patrick, you're worth it.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Ted.
There you go.
This is great. This is going to be great when the renegotiation comes up in 2 years. You can't live without me.
Yeah, I'm taking it out of your paycheck though.
Back. It is fucking expensive because I own my therapy website .com and .co.uk, and every couple of years when the renewals come up for that, boy, does that hurt for a month.
It's like $50 or something.
No, man, because I have the domain costs and the
domain costs are
the server costs as well. Like, so it's
okay.
So it's that month it like wipes out like half of my therapy earnings. Bullshit. The first year I did therapy, I did my finances at the end of the year, and I lost 13p
Nice.
on the year. It was fucking amazing. I was just like, the government should pay me. This is incredible.
There's a while when I played Magic the Gathering where like it cost me money. And then at some point it got to be like neutral. And then at some point it was paying me like many tens of thousands of pounds a year because I was covering it as opposed to to playing it. And I was getting like all this free product as like gifts for covering it. Like they give you extra comp and stuff that worked around it, or they used to. And so suddenly I'm like up about 75K on the year because of Magic the Gathering. And I looked at my ex and I was like, see, I told you so.
So you were like Ravi, like saying to his mum, like when his mum was like, "You'll never make a career watching cricket in your bedroom." And Ravi, well, I was going to say Ravi would be like, "Fuck you," but there's absolutely no way he's ever said that to anyone in his life. But same vibe.
Yes, exactly. And that happened with analytics too. So I had cancer at the end of 2012, testicular cancer, and then I had one big dose of chemo, and they wouldn't let me work for like 6 weeks after chemo. And so I was so bored. And it was like middle of winter here. I've got 2 toddlers. I'm like, I just need anything to think about and do. And a friend of mine who was running the Magic Online program gave me like a bunch of free packs. He's like, yeah, I know cancer is really tough. Like, go ahead and do that. And then I bought a guitar, like a cheap starter guitar, but a guitar that I was like, oh, I'll take this time to start learning guitar because, like, it's a good time to take stock and do things you've never done with your life. So I bought that. But then really what happened was I started writing about football analytics and all the stats and the data. Mm-hmm. And that turned into StatsBomb, the blog, which turned into Brentford, which turned into StatsBomb, the company, and eventually this podcast. So there we are. But yeah, it was the case where sometimes you think it's just a little hobby to get you through for a while, and eventually it changes your life.
Yep. That's exactly how this football shit happened for me. I just wrote a couple of articles because Bobby Gardner, it was just after he'd left uni, and he and a couple of other guys, I think Tom Warville was one of them. Like they just started like that online magazine thing. They were like, we want writers. And I wrote a couple of articles for them, and we got on really well. And then after that, I just stumbled sideways into this football shit.
I really like Bobby. He's been down in Milan for many years now.
Yeah. I imagine that is interesting.
It used to be top secret, and then I think they sort of acknowledged it, and there were photos of him and Thiago and Ben Treveni, who's gone on to work with Ludonautics now and Ian Graham's group. Treveni's super smart, and Cody. Bobby's the type of guy who definitely should be a future director of football. And I think that he's mellowed a lot over the years, but still like a great person to talk to when he's a bit fiery in the pub as well. But yeah, he was a big part of their title rebuild along with Hendrik Almstadt, who was his boss there. Very, very cool organization, but a lot of people don't know the insides and outs of that because they just see whatever noisy player happens to be at the top of the org chain.
Yeah. the eternal Milan problem.